Okay, let's go to Tanya. We're in Perek Lamed Daled, which we began last week. On the top is page Mem Gimel. At the bottom, it's page 154. Okay, and we're going to start. We learned a few more lines, but you have to start from 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lines at the bottom of the page for those that are following. Okay, so in Perek Lamed Daled, the Alter Rebbe began saying, after he's speaking about the joy that a person has by transforming the world to Kedusha, and Hashem comes to him and leaves everything and just connects himself to you, so you can imagine the great simcha that a Jew has. So Alter Rebbe started saying in Perek Lamed Daled, it's known that the Avis, Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, were called, the Medrash says, a Merkava. A Merkava means the chariot, the horse, which means they were completely bottled, subjugated, non-existent, completely subservient, 24/7 to Hashem. That means whatever Hashem wanted was like the rider leads the horse to where the rider wants to go. Hashem leads the tzaddikim wherever Hashem wants them to go, that's where they go. And therefore, by Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the greatest of them all, it says, Shechina medaberes mitech groine shel Moshe. The Shechina spoke through Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth because he was so one with Hashem. He was like Hashem's microphone. But now, and by every Jew had that in Matan Torah. So, but in order to keep it, Hashem said, build for me a Mishkan, build for me a Beis HaMikdash. Okay, now the Alter Rebbe says, Mishachar Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olam, Hashem doesn't have in his place. Where's Hashem's home now? There's no Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash was Hashem's home. Where's Hashem's home? Where's Hashem's home now? He says, Ein ba'olam mishkan amochem l'shiftei. There's no dwelling place, meaning Yehuda Yisbarach, the essence of Hashem. Ela arba amesh shel halacha, in the 4 cubits of halacha, of Torah and halacha. Why halacha? Shuratzeinei v'yisbarich, which is the will of Hashem, v'chachmasei, and the wisdom of Hashem, meaning the mitzvahs that He commanded us to do is what He wants us to do, and the Torah that we learn, that's the wisdom of Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe is saying both expressions. It's Ritzayna Yizbarich, it's the will of Hashem, and V'chachmasa Yizbarich. Hamlubashim, which is enclosed by halachas aruchas lefanenu, and the halachas that are set before us. So now, where does Hashem find Himself? When a person learns Torah, and he says, "Lochein acha sheyan meka adam machshav." After a person delves his mind in the level of bittul, that he, like he said before the previous chapters, we are nothing compared to Hashem. Like we learned, the whole world is one word from Hashem's mouth. We're totally nothing. Based on the bittul that he's able to accomplish, he says, "Zeis yoshev al libay." This is what a person needs to think and realize. Because my intellect is very minute, and the source of my neshama is also, we don't have the neshamas of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Avis and the Tzaddik, and we're very simple people. We have simple neshamas. To really have complete subservience, to be that I am like the Avis. The others we're a Merkava. We cannot be a Merkava to Hashem. Not our Seichel understands it, not our level of Neshama has it. Because no mind can grasp Hashem, no matter how brilliant we are. And we can't have any possible understanding of Hashem. And not even a small iota of any manner whatsoever. Like the office and the Nevi'im did. Okay? So now the question is like this. Hashem, this is what Dr. Rebbe is saying, why Torah is important. The others were a Merkava. The Jews got that when the Torah was given. Then Hashem said, okay, Torah is given already. So how do you keep me in the world? Make a Mishkan, also Migdash. Make for me a Mishkan, a dwelling place for Hashem. What does it mean, a dwelling place for Hashem? It's like we learned other times. Shlomo Melech asked the question, when he finished building the Beis HaMikdash, in the Sefer of Malachim, Shlomo Melech turned to Hashem, because now he finished God's home. Okay? He said to Hashem, Halei Hashemayim, Hu Shmei Hashemayim, Lo Yechal Kolucha. The heavens and all the things in the heavens can't handle you. You're too great. Ba'af ki abayis hazeh, this home, this little building called the Beis HaMikdash is going to handle you. If the world is not great enough for Hashem to be there to reveal himself, it's the Beis HaMikdash. So what does it mean the Beis HaMikdash was God's home? Isn't God all over? Hashem's all over. Lesser sarponi minay. There is no place God doesn't exist. They tell when one of the Gerer Rebbes, the Sfasemis, was a little boy. Mamish a little boy. So a guy came over to him to tease him. He flipped him a coin and said, I'll give you a coin if you tell me where God is. He flipped it back and he said to him, he was a little kid, he said right away, I'll give you 2 if you tell me where he isn't. Hashem's all over. So what does it mean the Beis HaMikdash is Hashem's home? So what's the explanation? The explanation is very simple. Of course Hashem's all over, but he's not revealed. You don't see it. We read in last week's Pirkei Avos, Asara Nisim Nasal Avisenu Beis HaMikdash. There are 10 constant miracles in the Beis HaMikdash. You saw the Beis HaMikdash, you saw godliness. If godliness was revealed, of course Hashem's all over, but he's not revealed all over. So now the person's going to come along and say, there's no Beis HaMikdash. I'm not Moshe Rabbeinu on the others. My brain is so minute and so warped. How in the world can I make a dwelling place for Hashem? So he says, Lezeis, therefore, 2 lines from the end of the page. How do I make a dwelling place for Hashem within me and within my environment? Is Asik B'Talmud is by occupying oneself in Torah, Kfiyah Pnai Shali, based on how much time I have, B'Kfiyas Itim, establishing times to learn Torah, B'Yom V'Layla, like it says in Shulchan Aruch. Now, if you notice, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say Limud B'Talmud Torah, learning Talmud Torah. The Alter Rebbe's expression is, and many times you find this even in Mishnah and Chazal, Asik HaTorah, Lasik B'Divrei Torah. What's the difference between Limud HaTorah, learning Torah, or like it says here, Asik HaTorah? Asik means it's your business. Asik means means you own a company, you own a business. There's a fundamental difference between a worker and the boss. You can have a very devoted worker, works from 9 to 5, comes on time, leaves on time, is not on his phone the whole day. He's doing his job properly. Very good worker. The issue is, though, 5 o'clock when he goes home, it's over. There's no business anymore because it's not his. He can learn Torah diligently from 9 to 5, and it's still not him. Asik HaTorah means not only do you learn Torah like you learn Torah. Asik HaTorah means it becomes your business, meaning a guy that owns a business eats business, sleeps business, dreams business, talks business. It's one with them. You want to create a mochin, a shifta yizbarch. You want to create a Beis HaMikdash, a home for Hashem within ourselves. The Alter Rebbe says, Asik b'Talmud Torah, that it becomes your occupation Establishing times. In the English, it says appointed times. It's even more than kriyas. Kriyas item batera. To discuss halacha for a second. Kriyas item batera. It says in Shulchan Aruch, a Jew has an obligation to learn Torah day and night. Meaning, a man, not a woman. A woman has enough Torah that she needs to learn. They'll take a few lifetimes. The Rebbe spoke about that many times. But men have a halachic obligation to learn Torah 24/7. The Torah says you can take time off from business, you could take time to eat, you could take time to sleep, you can take time for this. But technically, a person's asik at the b'kviyas item Torah. Now, kviyas item means, kavua means established. And the Friedrich Rebbe says in many Maimorim, and the Rebbe says it also. What does it mean, Kviyas Itim? It's established. You know, many people, the Friedrich Rebbe writes this, even in the Maimorim, he writes this. He says, in Basi Lagan, he says, the time for eating and sleeping, that's 10 o'clock is bed, 10 o'clock is bed, not 10:01. Breakfast is 8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock, not 8:01. And yet the Rabbi writes, when it comes to learning, okay, 8 o'clock, you have a share, come 8:05, davening is 7:30, I'll come 7:35, mincha, I'll come late. There's an interesting halach in Shulchan Aruch. This applies to men, not to women. A guy has a set time to learn Torah every day. You need a set time in the morning and at night. And he says, based on what time you have or whatever. What happens if you have an emergency that comes up? Let's say you have a class from 8 to 8:30, okay? And every day you have to learn. You have an obligation to learn 8 to 8:30 every day. Now an emergency comes up, you can't make it. You know what it says in Shulchan Aruch? You're borrowing the time. You have a halachic obligation to pay back the time. I went to a wedding, it was my own wedding or a brother's wedding, whatever. Okay, I take off the learning. Shulchan Aruch says you have an obligation to pay back that time. And by the way, interest in that case would be allowed. If you borrow a half an hour time, you pay back an hour, God wouldn't mind it. That interest is allowed. But here he says like this: the kfiyas item established time b'yom v'layla, kedas hanitna based on the halacha which is given l'chol echad, because every person has an obligation to learn Torah during the day and at night. But some people, based on what they do, have an obligation more. And he says, based on the amount of time you had, as it says, Hilchos Talmud Torah. K'mayim Razal, like the Gemara says, afilu perek echad shachris. There's some people that can fulfill their obligation with one chapter in the morning and one chapter in the evening. So he says like this: a person, this is again to make more simcha. He says, I am able to make a Beis HaMikdash for Hashem within me. I can make a personal, only me Beis HaMikdash. What do? I make a dwelling place for Hashem. I learn Torah whenever I can. And again, the others by themselves were great. They were Merkava, they were Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak, Moshe Rabbeinu. They were great. We are not that great. So how do I make a home for Hashem? So the Gemara says, now that there's no Beis HaMikdash, where does Hashem find himself in the world? Where is Hashem's home that he could reveal himself into? In the Dalet Amos Shalalach, in learning Torah. And therefore, a person will rejoice. The yogil, and he'll be happy. Yit and Haidah, and he'll give thanks to Hashem al chelkai, on his portion, meaning that Hashem gave him his lot, b'simcha v'tuv levav, with joy and a happy heart, al shezacha, that he merited, lias ushpezichen legvura, that he could be the home the dwelling place of Hashem, hosting Hashem, Pamayim b'chol yom, twice a day, in the morning when he learns and at night when he learns. Fi ha'es b'pnai shalei, based on my time. Kamisas yodei, based on the capacity which Hashem, that God gave me. And he's going to say, if you can learn Torah more, you can learn Torah more. So what the Rebbe is saying over here is very simple. A Jew needs to understand that I can create as personal dwelling place for Hashem by learning Torah. And as explained, do some during mitzvahs. Now, the ultimate home for Hashem, now the Rebbe is going to allude to it later, but it says this in other places also. You want to really make a home for Hashem? Now, how can a finite person make a home for an infinite God? It doesn't, mathematically, it doesn't work. Theoretically, it doesn't work. How do you have a finite person with a finite neshama limited by the body? How can a finite person become a home for an infinite God? So he says, number one, by learning Torah. But there's a very important part of it, which is fundamental to this. And that is when we break our limitations. When a person goes out of his characteristic, his natural characteristic traits. In other words, you're accustomed to learn, let's say, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. So the Alter Rebbe says, that 10 minutes, you are creating a home of Hashem. But the realistic aspect of it is, if I learn 11 minutes, when I'm breaking my habit, I'm breaking my limitation. Granted, it's still limited. It's only 11 minutes. It's not infinite time. Instead of 10, I'm doing 11. It's only a minute more. But that's not the point. I broke my nature because my nature is to learn 10 minutes a day. If I break my nature and now learn 11 minutes a day, technically speaking, I reached my infinite level. Because what's infinite? Above limitations. My limitations are 10 minutes. I break my limitations. I learn 11 minutes. I am creating now within myself a home for the infinite God. Because now I'm infinite. I broke my nature. That's like we learned the concept of going out of Mitzrayim every day. What's the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim every day? Going out of your boundaries and limitations. When a Jew goes out of his boundaries and limitations, then they reach the infinite. So it's very interesting. One guy could reach infinite by learning 11 minutes a day. And another guy could be learning 10 hours a day straight, and he didn't reach the infinite yet. Because it's still within his habits and nature. So yes, 10 hours of learning is better than the 11 minutes of learning, by far. Nevertheless, there's a unique advantage of the guy learning 11 minutes a day if he's breaking his nature over the guy that learns 10 minutes a day. Based on what Dr. Rebbe explained in the 15th parak, in Parak Tezvav, one is called Eved Alikim. The guy that breaks his nature is called serving God. And the guy that doesn't break his nature, he could be learning 10 hours a day, 20 hours a day, 30 hours a day. But he doesn't break his nature. He's called Loi Avoda, he's not serving God. So the Rebbe is saying basically, you want to create this home for Hashem. Number one, to learn as much as he can. And then he says like this, and if Hashem will give him more, more time, so to speak, Azai Taher Yodayim, then he has clean hands. Yosef Aimet, he'll add in effort, Umachshava Teva, and a good idea, and a good thought Hashem considers like action, and therefore he could learn even more. And then he says like this, The gam shara yen kulai, even the rest of the day. Talking about business people here. The rest of the day. And when you're doing business, so you're not learning, you're not davening, you're doing business. He can still be a dwelling place for Hashem by giving tzedakah from what you earned. To give from what you worked on. It wasn't money that you got inheritance. You worked for the money. Which being kind is one of the attributes of Hashem. Mahu Rachum, just like Hashem is merciful, you should be merciful. Like it says in Tikkun Zeir, Chesed D'Raya Yamina. Chesed is the right hand of Hashem. Was Al Rebbe basically saying over here what it says in many places in Chassidus. When a person takes the right hand and gives tzedakah, at that moment, he is a merkava, like Avram Avinu was a merkava to chesed of Atzilus. When a Jew takes his hand and gives a poor person money or puts it into a tzedakah pushka, at that moment, he is becoming bottle to chesed of Atzilus, a merkava. Just like by learning, you're creating this home for Hashem, then the Alter Rebbe says, even when you're in business, you're creating the home for Hashem. Because if you give tzedakah or other things that we'll discuss soon in business, then you're becoming a merkava to chesed of Atzilus. But the difference is, like we learned many times, Avram Avinu was a merkava to chesed of Atzilus 24/7. We can give money in the pushka, we become a merkava to chesed of Atzilus, and the next minute, God forbid, we can do an aveda with the hand. We can hit somebody, do something wrong with the hand. So, but that doesn't take away from the fact that at that moment you gave tzedakah, you were a merkava to Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Chafei of Tanya, we learned, Yichud zeh l'mayla nitzchi le'elam voed. This unity that a Jew puts money in the pushka, he became bottled to Hashem. He became completely united with Hashem, that now Hashem is, you're Hashem's home. Yeah? That level, because God is above time and place, it doesn't mean for the minute you gave tzedakah, then you're bottled to Hashem. That unity is permanent forever because Hashem is above time and place. So you did a mitzvah, you bound yourself to Hashem, you made Hashem a home for Hashem, who is above time and place. So basically, you're continuously bottled to Hashem, but not really, because the same hand could do something wrong. The same mouth that speaks Torah can speak Lashon Hara. I mean, so do you have that thing? They were 24/7. And therefore, it says when a person does mitzvah tzedakah, he becomes a merkava to chesed of Atzilus. He says, "Av she'eino neisin elochemish." You're not giving away all your money. You're only giving away. Alter Rebbe speaks about 20% instead of the obligatory 10%. So I'm only giving a fifth of my earnings. How am I connected to Hashem? He says, that fifth, Maila Imai elevates with it, Kol ha'aba yodis Hashem, all the other 80%. Liyesmachan l'shifta yizbarich, to become a dwelling place for Hashem. The Alter Rebbe is saying here another remarkable concept why a person should be happy. He's giving 20% to tzedakah, which means 80% he's not giving to tzedakah. But nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says this 20% or 10% elevates the other 80 or 90%, that all the money that you're making is kedusha. It's all a home for Hashem. And he says, where do we see this? He says, very interesting. The Gemara says, mitzvah tzedakah, shkula keneged kol hakabanos. The Gemara says that tzedakah is equal to all sacrifices. Okay? That's what the Gemara says. Now, to giving tzedakah, they're bringing all the sacrifices. Now, by karbanis, haya kol achai ela lashem aidei behema achas. It says in Medrash Kabbalah, when a person brought a korban, it's interesting. There are 4 parts to every korban. There was the person bringing it, the animal, okay, the flour offering, and the wine libation, the Nisach Hayayim. That was inanimate, plant, animal, and human. And it says, when you brought an animal, not that I'm saying this right now, when you brought an animal as a korban, that animal that you brought as a sacrifice elevated all the animals in the world. The measurement of flour that you brought, even though it's a small Isarin Silas, not a very large amount, that elevated all plant life in the world. The person who brought the korban elevated all humanity. When they poured wine, which is inanimate object, it elevated all daemon. Every time a person brought a korban, everything in the world became elevated. All inanimate, all plant, all animal, and all human. And he says, V'chol hatzemeach, and all the plant life, when you add the flour up, it mixed with the oil, and oil is also inanimate. So therefore, when a person gives tzedakah, it's like karbanis, the Gemara says. If tzedakah is like karbanis, and just say by karbanis, one korban elevated the whole world, so one tzedakah that you're giving is going to elevate everything. It elevates all the other 80% of your money. Not only that, Alter Rebbe says even more. When a person learns in daven, where did they get strength to learn in daven? From the food they ate. From the food they ate. So then, Hashem, it becomes elevated to Hashem. Kol ma sha'achol v'shasa. Anything the person ate and drank. Anything the person bought for his body, when the person davens and learns, it elevates all the food that he ate, all the drink that he drank, every piece of clothing that he bought, because you need all that stuff to daven. The Alter Rebbe says, this is unbelievable simcha that a person can have. Meaning, there's no Beis HaMikdash, so now I can make my own. How? I learn. Establish times to learn Torah. I can give tzedakah. I can eat and drink, and then eventually when I learn with that power, all of that is elevated to Kedusha. Meaning, what do you mean elevated to Kedusha? It's Hashem's home. Where there is Kedusha revealed, the definition of Kedusha is Hashem being revealed. That is the definition of Kedusha. That's what Alter Rebbe says in Perek Vav of Tanya. Kedusha means a place where Hashem is revealed. Hashem's all over. Where is Hashem revealed? In Inyanim of Kedusha. You do something of Kedusha, you're making a home for Hashem. So now I give tzedakah, I elevate all the other 80% of the money. I learn in daven, I elevate all the food and drink that I drink and ate. And I elevated the sleep that I did to be able to learn. And I elevated all my clothing. So everything becomes elevated. If it becomes elevated, the person has to have a simcha. Look, I'm making a home for Hashem throughout my entire body. Because the food I ate, that I gained weight from, and then whatever, is a vessel for Hashem's revelations. Now, somebody was asking over here, let me just check. So the world should be much elevated by now. Yes, it is. But the problem is there's so much garbage going on in the world, so it schleps it down. But a little light dispels a lot of darkness. Yes, the world is elevated. Yes, the world is ready for Mashiach. There's one more push needed. And why don't we see it? Because We are blind. We don't see what we accomplish. Tzaddikim, by the way, sees it. The neshama sees it. And neshama sees and feels the kedusha that we brought into the world. Tzaddikim that have open eyes see the kedusha that's brought into the world when people do mitzvahs. Why don't we see it? First of all, when Mashiach comes, everybody's going to see it. We're going to see it. Why don't we see it until then? Because we need to go to the eye doctor and get a stronger spiritual prescription in our eyes, in our spiritual eyes, and then we could see it. But the truth of the matter is, we just learned in Pirkei Avos, should I take out a second mortgage to pay back all my lost learning? It's not going to help. Take out a second mortgage and give my children the money would help. Was interesting. So a person makes the home for Hashem. And by the way, we learned that, I know what I'm saying. We just said in Pirkei Avos, mitzvah geredes mitzvah. One mitzvah, the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, mitzvah geredes mitzvah, avera geredes avera. Right? Mitzvah brings and schleps another mitzvah, and a sin schleps another sin. That means you do one mitzvah, you're going to do another mitzvah. You do one sin, you're going to do another sin. Why? Why? The explanation is very simple. A mitzvah makes me holier. Once I'm holier, it's easier to do another mitzvah because I'm holier. If I do an aveda and it drags me into impurity, then of course it's easier to do another impure act because I'm low. I'm impure, so I could do another impure act. So when a person does mitzvahs, by the way, it does have an impact on the person. They are creating a home for Hashem. You are creating an Airbnb for Hashem. Your home is becoming Hashem's home. Not only your home, your body, your own body is a home. Why is a home a miniature Beis Hamikdash? Because you have husband, wife, children, all that. Those are the letters of Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's why, in order to have God resting in a home, there has to be what's called Shalom Bayis. Because Hashem can only rest in a place where there's peace. So when there's peace, by the way, peace within himself. We spoke not long ago in Shul that people are not at peace with themselves. You know why they're not at peace with themselves? Because the head is going in one direction and the heart is going in another direction. A human being, as the Alter Rebbe said before, everybody could be a Beinoni, that the mind controls the heart, means the mind and the heart are all in the same direction. That's peace. When you have a tug of war, the head is schlepping you one way, and the heart is schlepping you in a different way, then you don't have completeness. You don't have shalom. You can't make a Beis Hamikdash for Hashem. So the Avedas, he says, this is the Jew, Simcha. And by the way, it's like we're going to stop, but now the Alter Rebbe says, and at the same time, you have to feel despicable in your own eyes. And it's not a contradiction. Both can coexist. Okay, Mitzvah Shem. Again, Monday night there's a class. Next Wednesday night there's no class because it's out of Yom Tif. Everybody have a good Shabbos, good Chodesh, and good everything, and a good, well, we'll see you Monday night. If not, have a great Yom Tif.